And we're live. This is Smarter San Diego, social distance approved. We've got our homeboys in here, Brent Cole. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good to have you here. The real estate perspective is in the house. Cooper McLaughlin is here. Flag
Howdy.
Star Retail. Got all kinds of cool, crazy lending programs we'll talk to you about. The big thing right now, fellas, I think that we have to really jump into right off the bat is going to have to be this rent moratorium. And when coronavirus first hit and stimulus discussions were going on and there was a whole bunch of, you know, where should money go, trillions of dollars were thrown at a problem. Unfortunately, a lot of things were just said. Hey, this is the rule. And banks were told, people don't have to make payments anymore. The banks went, huh? And then now landlords are being told, people don't have to pay rent. What? So it's a very difficult scenario, this moratorium on rent. Brent, I'll let you start with this. Kind of, what does this mean, you know, from a landlord perspective if, you know, hey, I've got investment properties, but people don't have to pay rent anymore?
Yeah, I mean, the burden lies on the owner. And it's a tough situation because, you know, the uncertainty whether or not the tenant is gainfully employed. If they are or they're not, they can use this as a way to leverage in a lot of different ways. So,
do they need an excuse though to not pay rent? Because it sounds to me like, I mean, based on what I've seen, it's just kind of like you don't have to pay rent.
Yes, but I believe that you have to provide documentation.
You do.
So,
technically, okay.
So, and I think there's recourse. Eventually, it needs to be paid back, but there's a, you know, there's still impact there, and owners are definitely going to be feeling that, and there's a million different scenarios that fall around that. So it's tough.
It is. It's interesting. So, Coop, I mean, if you're a landlord, which I know you are, you know, in that particular scenario, is it basically like, okay, well, you pay the loan on your own because you don't have necessarily an excuse other than that this person isn't paying to get a forbearance, or you go to forbearance, which also isn't great.
Well, and the issue with that is just because your tenants aren't paying the rent doesn't mean that you qualify for forbearance.
Really?
If you still are gainfully employed and you can make those payments legally, you're supposed to make those payments.
What does gainfully employed mean?
That's $1 million question.
Does that mean, because there's a lot of these terms that we're using, and by the way, we're live on Facebook right now. Drop us a comment, say what's up if you want to. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this whole situation. If you have an opinion, let us know. You know, so we hear things like that. You know, we continue to hear the words like gainfully employed, or you know, you need to have documentation. I mean, what does it really take if I'm, you know, if I'm married and my spouse can't work anymore, which has happened to a lot of people? Yeah. I bet you're glad you're out of the restaurant business now for more than one reason, because restaurants completely decimated, crushed. Can you imagine if you still on the corner, what you would do in a situation like this? You'd just be screwed.
I would be completely screwed. I would probably be divorced, or on my way to being divorced. And I would be
true story though.
True story. And I would be starting over at 45 years old with debts that would essentially bury you for the rest of your life. And the funny thing, well, I should say not funny thing that I find about this whole situation is that the government comes in, mandates, you know, that we shut down, we have to make all these changes. And the restaurants are the brunt of it. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, the flip side of that, do you think the IRS is going to forgive any of these payroll taxes that the employers can't pay? Any of the other, you know, employment taxes associated with this? Not a chance. So they're going to drive them out of business. The IRS is going to have this huge tax bill, and they're now going to come after these restaurant owners who have already lost everything and make sure for the rest of their lives they are not going to get above water. Here's
an interesting fact for you guys. The amount of money that the government brings in, approximately, for all the fact checkers on YouTube, is about $200 billion a month. So $200 billion a month, we can do the math real quick on that. Coop, $2.4 trillion a year. We passed the first multi-trillion-dollar stimulus, which was more than that entire amount. You essentially could have forgiven taxes to everyone for a whole year and still had $1.2 trillion to play with on that first stimulus bill. Unfortunately, only 10% of the money actually went into the pockets of the American consumer. which has worked. We will say that. I mean, the retail numbers that came out were really, really good. However, I believe the hints that we're getting from the retailers who are reporting, I've been following this really closely because the retailers, I think, tell the tale. When you see the number of companies that are filing for bankruptcy and so on and so forth, we see all this stuff amidst a real estate market that's on fire, amidst the lowest mortgage rates we've seen in forever. I mean, you have this dichotomy of what's going on where it's feast and famine. People are getting completely crushed by this. And there are people who are murdering through this, like Amazon, for example. Certain businesses were built for it, certain ones weren't. Coop.
Well, this is true, and I think there had to be some attrition in the restaurant business, whether we went through this COVID thing or not.
Think so?
I think that there
overbuilt.
It was definitely overbuilt, and so this was something that was going to happen more gradually, I think, than what is happening now. But now there's a lot of good restaurants that should have made it and would have made it that aren't going to make it.
Because they just weren't able to adapt quickly
Well,
enough.
who has those deeper pockets? Restaurant owners don't. Okay.
People think they do.
They do not. And let's not forget that California has been squeezing small business and restaurant owners in particular for a long time. They've been raising minimum wages. They've been hitting them for tax, paid sick days for restaurant employees. I mean, they're notorious for going out, and having a good time because that's why you're in that business. Hey, I don't feel well. I'm not making it in today. And guess what? You're going to get this for a small business owner is burying them.
Yeah.
And people haven't addressed it. And to go more directly to how does this affect the rental market and landlords and everything else, these restaurant employees are the ones that are renting disproportionately, especially in the metro area, and they're out of jobs.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be paying anytime soon. Where are they going to go to find jobs that are going to cover the rent that they had to pay in these metro areas?
And this was the connection that I wanted to make here, and thank you for bringing us back to earth and to center. And I didn't even think about having this conversation with you. Cooper owned the Corner Restaurant, which is right there on 10th and J, right by the ballpark. I don't know what it is now. It became a fancy restaurant after you were done with it.
Gina Champion purchased it, and she's now, I think, doing 20 years, or she's been indicted for embezzling apparently $200 million from investors. As it turns out, that's illegal.
Wow, rabbit hole. Wow, that's crazy. We could go down that one. But, you got out of the restaurant industry, back into the mortgage industry where you were before, and, I went to that bar a lot. This is downtown, let's say 10 years ago. A lot of people did. The locals who lived in there did. So I know you know how that stuff works. But this is the connection of the dots that we were going to make, Brent, on the moratorium for rents, because disproportionately, the renters, if you look at the biggest grouping, I think you would probably find that it's industry-related type employees because it's more difficult for them to qualify for a loan to purchase, right? They got to make a lot of cash. They don't have big salaries. Prices here are expensive, but they can make the rent payment assuming that they get their 3 or 4 shifts a week and people come to the restaurant. Now, when that stops, these are people who are going to, for sure, go on unemployment, but they're not going to get very big unemployment benefits because they don't pay into it very much. So they're going to get a very small amount. They will get stimulus checks, but that's not going to last forever. Right. So you have this group of people who legitimately can say, I can't pay you the rent.
Yes.
But I also don't have anywhere to go. So those people are going to stop paying rent. Now buck gets passed, hot potatoes with the landlord.
Yes.
Landlord owns the real estate, says, hey, I'm supposed to get my rent. We have an agreement. You're going to pay the rent. I'm sorry things are not working out for you, but we have an agreement that you can't uphold, so I've got to go through my process. Now the government is saying, hold the phone. You can't do that. That's where I have a little bit of an issue. I understand people need to be housed, but who's writing the check here? I mean, if the government were to say, listen, this person can't pay their rent, we're sorry, you can't evict them, here's their rent, that's a different story.
That is a different story.
That's a different story, but just say, no, you can't evict them, and they don't have to pay you rent, is not right. It's not right by the rules of the land, it's not right by the idea of owning real estate. It's this thought, this underlying thought that everyone who is a landlord is rich.
I would even go as far to say that it goes against the fundamental founding principle of our country. The original governments here in the colonies were formed for the sole purpose of protecting real estate and land.
That's true.
That is the main first reason that local governments were formed in the colonies.
Yeah, yep, to protect land, because ultimately it was defending the land originally,
Yeah.
taking the land back from England or whatever.
Who owns the land? You know, how are you going to get workers on the land?
Yeah.
You know, how are you going to pass title? How are we going to collect taxes?
How do we know who owns what and at what areas do they own?
Right.
Those things are fundamental for sure in the creation of the real estate market, which is the biggest provider of revenue and jobs to the overall economy. So we have kind of a situation right now that and a lot of people don't know the answers, right? There's a lot of big question marks. We were talking about earlier, gainfully employed. What does that mean? Documentation needed for, moratorium on rent. But what does that mean? What's legitimate? What isn't? And who is looking at this stuff? Is anyone even looking at it, or have we just made laws? One of the things the government likes to do is make laws, and then they make no enforcement arm and no marketing arm. So sometimes they'll make a great law, it's great for everyone, no one knows about it. Sometimes they'll make a law, it's terrible for people, they have no one to enforce it. So right now you just kind of have the Wild West mentality. This is the great concern with the real estate market. Meanwhile, the market is on fire like I have never seen before in my life of being involved in this stuff. I got into the mortgage industry when I was 19 years old. I have never seen anything like this before. How hot the market is. Can we talk about that?
Yes.
Because I think it's, hey, rent moratorium, is it going to, crush San Diego landlords? For sure it's a problem. Whether it will crush them or not, we need to see. It's for sure a problem, and I'm sorry, we don't know to tell you who to call to get the answers, unfortunately. Right?
Well, but I think this is going to lead, and I'm not going to go down a political hole by any stretch, but it's so important to be invested in local politics. Everyone is so focused on the national level of things, whether you're Democrat, Republican, whatever it is. It's the local level. Find people. There's good people in both parties and even outside of both parties that are running for office, that care about San Diego, and will make sure that they do the right thing for San Diego.
Yeah, definitely be plugged in. There's a lot of propositions and a lot of different things to vote on. Whole bunch of stuff going on. I wish there were a better way to do it. I do think Congress has been more of a problem than a solution, unfortunately. But when it comes to that, we also have, we'll talk about people leaving California in a second. I do want to talk to the specifics of what's actually going on in the real estate market, Brent, because I've never seen a market this hot before. How could it be? So many people reached out to me, hey, I'm interested in buying a home because I'm expecting prices to be really low right now based on coronavirus and all this scare. And so I would like to get pre-approved. Well, wait a minute, the market's on fire. I don't know what your expectation is, but how could you explain this?
Well, I mean, let's talk about the timeline.
Okay.
And March 11th you were talking about, and where we were at. I think the last time that we filmed and had an episode here,
right before that.
And a lot of unknowns, uncertainties. It just didn't feel like the impact was going to be where we're at today. It certainly was a scary feeling, and it felt like the record stopped, and is there going to be any transactions? And for a couple weeks there, that uncertainty, but all of a sudden, people started getting out there. We had, they deemed real estate as an essential business, so we were able to. That was crucial. So we were able to show property again, and people need a place to live. They need, for one reason or another, they need to move, or they, or sell, and things have accelerated. If they were confined to their four walls and they hated their home before, well, I think that revealed itself over the time while they were being quarantined, so they really had motivation to buy something else or sell. And so there's all those type of stories. But long story short, the single family home market in particular is just exploding. Multiple offers, property selling over asking price.
Way over.
And, it wasn't necessarily the case in the very beginning of this process. There was still some hesitation, and but then as the weeks went on, it just caught fire.
It really did.
Yeah.
And now we're at a point where it's like multiple offers on almost everything.
Yep.
You have, if you've got a home, I've got people who are looking that are in the 750, 800 range.
Good luck.
And they can't get anything. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
We're looking in El Cajon, Escondido for that price point. We can't get a place.
Yeah.
So they're picky, but a buyer who's paying that much money, they want a house that's what they want. So I totally get it. But we also, you know, it's like, how could this be? Yes, people cooped up, you know, in their house. I think that definitely played a role. We have extremely low mortgage rates, Cooper. That's
low.
something. What do you think is contributing to this frenzy?
Well, I mean, I think that Brent really hit on a nail on the head with a lot of this stuff. Is you have people that are sitting, whether they're in their condos or a small home, there's something about it they didn't like. They're in tight quarters with family members for extended times that maybe they didn't have before. They're realizing they need some space, outdoor space. Maybe it's a pool for the kids because what are the kids doing right now? You can't take them anywhere. Everything's closed.
That's true.
All of these factors start to come up and really start to come to a head, and you have some very difficult choices to make then. If you can afford to move out and do something where you're upgrading and you can fit more into the lifestyle that you see potentially as a long-term thing now, then now's the time to do it, because it's limited real estate in San Diego. Prices are only going to go up. It's not like the Bay Area where you're seeing the mass exodus to the Tahoe area or some of those, you know, outlying areas. Even LA is having that same kind of exodus. San Diego is still that place where people want to live, and this is going to be where people are motivated to stay during this pandemic. And interest rates are super low. Some of the lending programs are starting to come back online. There's other ones that who knows what's going to happen. But we're starting to stabilize in this market. And with the price points and where they are, we can still find good products to make things work for almost all the clients.
Well, and I'd have to agree. San Diego, you know, year-round you could live here and enjoy outdoor activities. And that's what people want, especially right now. You know, so...
Exactly, and that was going to be my big point. So I agree with you. One of the first things I thought was, man, and I'm thankfully I have this archived on the YouTube channel, so there's proof. But one of the first things I said was, hey, if people are going to be cooped up in their homes, then that's going to cause a lot of people to have the things that they don't like about their property sticking in their face all day. And if people don't have home offices, but they have to work from home, that's going to, you can't work from the kitchen table when you have kids running around.
Distance learning. I mean,
that right there, that's
what does that mean?
Oh boy.
That is that whole.
That's a whole other topic.
Yeah, that whole phrase it makes me angrier than anything I've heard in COVID.
Wait a minute, you mean we don't need these multi-million-dollar buildings for schools? So, you know, that's definitely a big one. Lower interest rates also something, but I think that one of the things that's huge, and you mentioned it when we were talking about the exodus that's taking place out of California. If you just look at the exodus out of California, it's crazy how many people are leaving California. Crazy. Even people leaving San Diego, which I think a lot of people regret that. I have a lot of people who call me and say, yeah, I'm coming back to San Diego. But, you know, if you leave San Diego, you'll want to come back. There's no better place to be. But you mentioned, hey, outdoor activities. Well, if we don't have a house that can contain entertaining our entire family all day every day, then we need to be able to get outside and enjoy it and do something that's fun. Well, you can do that in San Diego. That's not as fun 6 months of the year in San Francisco. You know, in LA, where are you going to go? You know, so here we have lots of places, lots of big open areas, beaches, grassy areas, parks, huge. I mean, we have a lot of great things that you can do outside. So I think that's huge. So low interest rates, people cooped up at home. Outdoor activities are there. But I also think that when you really look at the combination of all those things and people starting to think, okay, we were told that this was a pandemic, which in my mind means people are dropping dead on the street. And I think a lot of people believe that, hey, I'm going to see someone just drop dead at the gas station one day. And so initially we froze and went, whoa, they're telling us this is really, really bad. We better chill out. We better do a bunch of different things. Then as it kind of went on, I think people started, you know, the first few weeks were kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, this is the new normal. I'm wearing a mask. I'm going to the grocery store. There's no toilet paper. You know, what's going on? There's no toilet paper. But that was about the extent for the average person who didn't get coronavirus. That was about the average extent of what they had to deal with was where are we going to get toilet paper from? Are we going to be using paper towels for a short period of time here before the toilet paper gets restocked because I can't order it online either? That's what we had to deal with. So the seriousness, I think, for most people dissipated very quickly because we were told it was so bad, but our experience didn't follow through with that. So people got in the saddle as soon as it was named essential again. What happened? Immediately, It was blowing up with showings. I mean, people, it was going nuts. And then when people were getting payment quotes, oh, hey, guess what? Rates went down. The payment's cheaper than you thought. Even though you're paying $10,000 more than what the list price was, or $15,000 or $20,000 more, guess what? Your payment's lower than I quoted you because interest rates have come down. And that's, at the end of the day, what people are buying. Buying a payment, which is a lifestyle, which is a cash flow scenario.
Cash flow.
Cash flow.
I tell people that all the time. Everyone gets hung up on the cost of something. And the cost is almost, I don't want to say completely inconsequential, but the cash flow and your monthly expenses is everything. And when you have interest rates this low, your cash flow is really benefiting. You have an opportunity to do something, once in a lifetime opportunity, once in a lifetime. And if you don't take advantage when you can now, you're going to miss out.
A lot of people already have. I mean, rates have ticked up just a little from their all-time lows here recently in the last few days. Will we reside back? You know, it's hard to say, but.
And is that, let's face where the rates should be right now are even lower than where they were. The banks are making money. Fannie and Freddie, number one and number two for most profitable companies last year. One had, I think, 185% returns for their investors. The other one, 174%.
It's massive.
Massive amounts of profits these companies have. And now they've just instituted a half-point hit for any refinance transactions because perhaps they see us going in a recession. And the powers that be are like, well, we can still make money here.
Yeah, let's bank some insurance on this.
Let's make some insurance. So everyone is making money in this situation right now.
And the stock market won't go away either, which continues to go higher and higher and higher. And so the confidence that resides in people who aren't affected by COVID, because remember, even if we are at 33% unemployment, that means 67% of people probably unchanged. Well, if that's the case, most likely a lot of those people are people who are the home buyers and investors and so forth. And things are going pretty well for them. If you look at the 401k, it looks good. If you look at what your house is worth and your net worth, looks good. If you look at your opportunity to refinance, maybe say $300, $400, $500, $600 a month, looks good. So it's like you keep seeing these macro positives, but the news keeps going in your ear saying the sky is falling. So which are you believing? The people who are chirping at you or the things that keep happening right in front of you that are to your great benefit? Now, if you're a landlord, we talked about how you could have some problems there and how you're going to have to probably talk to an attorney to figure out, all right, what is my potential recourse here? Do I have to go into forbearance on my loans, which you should avoid forbearance like the plague, because let me tell you something. They're going to tell you that forbearance does not hurt your credit. And
it doesn't hurt your credit score.
It will not hurt your credit score, but it will hurt your credit profile.
In a big way.
Yeah, and your credit profile is essentially when someone looks at your credit report and determines if you are a good credit risk or not. They will look at some of those narratives, aka the wordings, and then if you have payments deferred, if you have accounts in forbearance, that's considered to be a desperate act. That's considered to be the act of someone who is in struggle, who is in trouble, and typically people who think you're in trouble don't want to give you money. So it is something that can negatively affect your credit profile, and we should encourage you to avoid forbearance unless it is the absolute last resort.
Yes, is what I'm going to say to that.
It's an absolute last resort for forbearance because it is just one of those things that doesn't have any upside to you. Trust me, the banks are going to do it, and they're going to structure it in a way that's beneficial to them, but it is not going to work out to be a benefit to you unless you absolutely have to have a few months where, you know, hey, maybe the husband or wife is a server or a bartender. I know a guy who's a bartender, he's got 3 kids.
Well, let's talk about another subset of people that generally we wouldn't think would fall into a need category here, but healthcare providers, doctors. I have doctor clients that have to go into forbearance because the hospitals aren't scheduling procedures.
And they're all like LLC independent type contractors, right?
No, not just the LLC independent contractors, but people actually working for hospitals. Their shifts are getting cut. All of these things are affecting.
Are they hourly?
Yeah.
Really?
They are.
Surgeons are hourly?
Surgeons are hourly. You know, and they set it up where they're partners in certain things, but they have to work a certain amount of hours, blah, blah, blah. But I actually have
Interesting.
doctor clients that are being forced into forbearance because their hours have been cut so significantly. We're talking about orthopedic surgeons, we're talking plastic surgeons, anyone who is not in essentially emergency medicine, they're losing out in a big way. These people have student loans, they have all this other stuff as well. And so it's not just the service industry that's getting affected and really falling into this. It's some of these very highly trained professionals as well.
Well, and this was the, investors considered this group to be the lowest risk. We marketed to physicians.
Zero down programs.
Healthcare, zero down programs. Investors were,
Yeah.
they were opening the books and saying, hey, we're offering loans with zero down and no mortgage insurance, and those programs disappeared overnight, when this whole thing hit.
So, and that brings us full circle where we think it's not going to affect, these 67% or 70% of people, white collar, that are still working. But this is a start, the dominoes are going to start to fall. And your businesses that you think are not going to be affected, one by one, are going to feel these ripple
Here's
effects.
the thing I don't understand. Let me back off a bit here and set my cup down for a minute. If the hospital is not a safe place to go, in other words, if they're canceling procedures because of concerns of infection and whatnot, if you can't go to the hospital and know that everything's okay and that it's taken care of and that it's safe to be, it's sanitary, then what in the world is going on? How could it not be? Because if it's not sanitary there where they're literally set up for it, then it'll never be sanitary anywhere else. No matter how far I stand away from you, Coop, no matter how many, I might wear 3 masks. If we can't get the hospitals to actually be able to take clients, walk in the door, then that tells me that something is fundamentally broken and someone somewhere is making a wrong decision, because either hospitals aren't what we thought they were, they're just a shed, may as well be getting looked at by Jed, your cousin, or it's a place where you can go where things are sanitary and you can walk into a doctor's office and know that this is a sanitary place to be.
Well, I think there's two parts to this answer. The first part is, let's take a hard look at the demographic of the people that are going in for some of these hospital visits. Generally, they're older. Maybe they're not in the best of health. So that is the at-risk demographic. So I think that takes a big chunk of people out. The second aspect of this is people are working in hospitals. You have employees coming in. People don't really know what was going on with the COVID, corona, whatever you want to call it. I think until we have a better handle on what it is and how it affects people, we're going to start to see this open up a lot more. I think these shifts will start to come back. They'll start doing procedures. People realize it's not the apocalypse. And this is a short-term thing that we're seeing that will, I hope, move back a little bit towards rational thought.
I hope we get there. I hope we get back there.
I do too.
And I do want to mention, I think one of my buddies might be watching here. Coop, you have it's the 10% down jumbo program.
We do. So we and this came back online. It's for high net worth zip codes in San Diego County. Well, it's nationwide, but mainly California focused is obviously where my business is. But it's the high net worth zip code. So you have the Del Mar, Solana Beach, Encinitas, Coronado, La Jolla, Carlsbad. And if you are purchasing in one of those zip codes, it's an adjustable rate program on either a 5-year or a 7-year arm, which means the rates are either fixed for 5 or 7 years. You can do 10% down. It's actually 10.1% down. No mortgage insurance. Rates in the mid-3s. And you only need 3 months reserves. Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to let my buddy know about that right now.
And it can be single family, it can be condos.
Yeah.
I think 2-unit is even acceptable. So.
Yeah, that's an incredibly good program. So
it is.
Those niches, you really need to know where the nooks and crannies are. I was
especially
Brent,
in this market, yeah.
Yeah, someone called me about a litigation condo in downtown. Agent was like, hey, I have this buyer. He was got 800 credit. Litigation Downtown was all I heard. It was like, yeah, I'm not the guy. That's not my game.
Yep.
There's those specific things that you really need to know where to go in order to get a good deal. And I had an agent asking me about that program. I didn't know he had it, so I wish I would have. I reached out to him to see if he's still got that client.
Yeah, and it's a good program, and it's come back online. We've got another good jumbo program that allows for 50% debt ratios, 1-year tax returns, and if it's a departing residence, we don't need to use a lease or any of that, and we can exclude the mortgage payment from that departing residence. That
is amazing. So, really cool programs that you've got at Flagstar. We've talked about the doctor nurse program before. You've got some really unique things there. This is obviously a big deal from the jumbo side because pretty much everybody's 20% or 25% down on jumbo. So if you have a 10% down opportunity, it's a really, really, really big deal, especially with rates in the mid-3s and no mortgage insurance.
And let's face it, jumbo 30-year fixed rates right now, the jumbo market has not gone the same way that the conforming market has gone. So
doesn't have the Fed behind it.
Right. So the secondary markets have not responded and said, yeah, let's have 2.5% 30-year fixed jumbo rates. So the jumbo rates are still relatively high. So it makes those rates even more competitive and attractive.
I wonder where you could buy some bonds and jumbo mortgages because that's where the yields are much higher right now than some of the guarantee stuff where you're starting to see those yields get under 2%. But it's still sexy because the bottom line is, where else are you going to get anything? That's the reason. One of the reasons the stock market is higher, which actually keeps rates from going as low as they could. If the stock market goes up every single day, people are wanting to invest in that. If we could get a few days of breather on that, then you'd probably see rates go even lower. But this, I think, my point on the second one. So we talked about rents, the moratorium on rents, and landlords being in trouble with that. Essentially, what's going on and how to deal with it. Maybe call an attorney, see what your options are with your current bank. Beware of forbearance not being a good deal. People leaving California, San Diego is not immune, but I think the difference is, this is my opinion, when you leave San Francisco, you're like, oh. When you leave San Diego, you're like, I think I've screwed up. I think I've done. Yeah. I've got so many calls from people who are like, yeah, I'm in North Carolina. Oh, I know San Diego. I'm coming back. So I think that's the difference is here we get to live this incredible life, literally the sweet spot in the universe with perfect weather, amazing outdoor activities, beaches, mountains, everything you want. And you look at this real estate market and you compare it to an LA, you compare it to Orange County, you compare it to San Francisco or Silicon Valley or New York or any of these other, Vancouver, name a big real estate market. Tell me how, sell me on how it's better than San Diego. People will say, oh, well, the average salary in San Francisco is higher. Yeah, but is it double? Is it triple? Because I can buy a place for $1 million in San Diego that's bonkers, still, even in this market, still. Whereas $1 million won't get me a thing in San Francisco, literally nothing, not a thing. Go search, go look, type in $1 million as your max and see what you see. Nothing. So, to be able to say that we're cheaper, better location, better weather, better things to do outside in a COVID world, in a pandemic world, this is like the absolute gasoline on the San Diego real estate market fire, and I believe that's one of the main reasons we're seeing it.
I agree. I think we're going to see a lot of people from these other metro areas moving down here for those very reasons. And we have a fairly diverse employment array as well with the military, which is a lot different than a lot of these other big metro areas.
That's true.
The biotech is
huge.
Big, is huge.
Communications.
Tourism. Yeah. I mean, we have a harbor, a port that's easily accessible. Cruises. I mean, I'm big on San Diego. I think, there's only upside.
Okay. Sanjay, what's up? We are live right now. If you want to drop some comments, tell us why you love San Diego. Tell us if you're a landlord or not, what your opinion is on that. So he says San Diego is the perfect city except for the food. It overall sucks except for the Mexican and Italian food. What else do you need, brother? Mexican and Italian is all you need. Let me tell you something. The food in San Diego definitely does not suck. But I am vegan for the most part. So, there are tons of great vegan spots here. I mean, I'm spoiled, like big time spoiled, based on the vegan spots that are here in San Diego. some of which are Mexican, some of which are Italian. There's places that are mixed. Civico 1845, for example, in Little Italy, has an amazing Italian menu. Then they have a vegan menu. You can get great vegan food at the place where someone like my wife who's not vegan can also get their cheese raviolis or whatever that she wants to get. I think the food here is underrated, and I think you're making my point for me. For people who are real foodies that come out here, like I have a brother-in-law who's a chef, his wife, they come out here and they go around and they love what they see.
Yeah, I think we've got some decent food. I haven't been eating out much.
Cooper's on the he's on a fitness kick, man. That guy's been drinking juices. You're like Jack LaLanne right now. You know that?
I mean, last time I was a fat guy in a little suit. I couldn't buckle this.
Yeah.
I was gonna break the buckle, and that was in March. So there's some tough choices.
I had to come to Jesus for you. You were like, all right, I couldn't get my.
My 12-year-old daughter, Dad, you're fat.
Oh,
give me the belly slap.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not fat. I'm healthy. No, Dad, you're fat.
Yeah, no, I get it too. He's saying, and the new California coastal cuisine that you see at every other restaurant, the rustic exposed wood decor. I know that's a little bit overplayed. I totally get it. So there is definitely, you go to the seaside, you're going to see seafood. Okay, is the seafood really that great and really that fresh in most places here? I don't eat seafood. I think it all smells terrible, so I don't know. But talking to the people that I talk to, if you go to a good restaurant, you may have to pay a little bit more, but you can get some of that amazing seafood.
And this isn't a plug for a restaurant, but the most incredible restaurant that I go back to, the only time I've been out with this whole pandemic and going someplace, getting takeout, whatever, Azuki Sushi on 5th Avenue, and I love sushi. It is hands down the best sushi spot that I go to.
That is good to know. People need a good sushi spot.
It is phenomenal. I mean, the guy that owns it is a Japanese guy. He's been in the business forever. It's just outstanding food every single time.
Yeah. When you find a place like that, you'll just hang on to it. There's places like that you can go to. The Well Plumeria is one for me, which is in University Heights, and also in Encinitas, extremely good vegetarian spot. Just amazing, dialed in every single time. Just amazing.
Now, son.
Yeah. You got one, Brent?
Oh,
got a
gosh.
shout out? Give me one.
I'm big on taco shops, so I have my little spots. La Perla, Cuisine number 3. I had my breakfast burrito there this morning, but of course Italian food, but we also like sushi. So we're kind of in our little bubble, but not eating out as much.
Yeah.
And so
I think we need to. I think we need to eat out more, order takeout, order delivery. I think that's something that we need to do collectively. I realize this is the time to make food at home, go to the grocery store and stuff like that. But we got to realize these restaurants, they won't be there. Right. Your favorite restaurant will just be, you won't know. They're not going to send you warning, hey, we're closing in 2 weeks if you idiots don't start ordering food. They're not going to send that to us. So, you're just going to go there one day, you're going to call and be like, no one's answering. Oh, shit, they closed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's happened multiple times. So if you really like a place, then you really need to patronize that place right now. This is a call to help save, Sanjay, to help us save the San Diego food that we do have and that we love. Go ahead and make that phone call, order some takeout, order some delivery, order some pickup. A lot of places are delivering now because they can't have as many people in the spot. I mean, I know at One Paseo, which is in my backyard, I think it's still shut down for the most part. I mean, there were several restaurants there. It's a brand new spot. Yeah. Tender Greens is in there. What's the other one? Shake Shack is in there. Some big name places that are in there. There's also the new Italian place. I can't remember. It has really good branding. It's blue and white. Anyway, there's some really big places in there, and it's essentially shut down.
Yeah.
These restaurants will go away. People will not just hemorrhage cash forever so that you can eventually get food when you're ready for it. You have to support these places. You have to go out of your way to support them at this point in time.
You do. Amen.
Yes.
I'll leave it at that.
Boom. Mm-hmm. All right. Guys, final thoughts on any wisdom that we can impart today and get some shares here. Share this if you want to make your friends smarter than everyone else, please. Thank you for watching, Sanjay. Appreciate it.
My final thought is don't wait for San Diego real estate to come back down. I'm going to buy on the bottom. It's not going to happen. Buy now. If you want to live here, buy now, because it's only going up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my thought is that the demand is really high right now. If you are looking to buy, I highly encourage you to choose wisely who your representation is, with an agent who knows how to negotiate, knows how to communicate with the other side. I think up front, especially when there's a dozen offers, being able to find out the nuances and what the seller is really looking for in the transaction, because if you have that line of communication up front, I can't say how important that is. If you can craft the offer to cater, unfortunately in a seller's market, when it's the demand is so high, we don't have the opportunity to negotiate as much for the buyer. Oftentimes there's multiple offers, and it comes out of sheer emotion that but at the end of the day, winning the deal is the most important in getting that home.
And so I think we need to redefine the term negotiate, because negotiate is believed to be, hey, I'm beating you up, come on, Coop, give me $5 more. No, negotiating means winning.
Winning the deal.
Me negotiating on your behalf means I win for you.
Right.
However that is. In the old days, it might have been, oh, well, you got a lot of things here that need to be fixed, and, okay, I'm going to try to get the offer up as high as Now, negotiating may look like, what can I do for you? How can I make this easy for you, Mr. and Mrs. Listing Agent? What do you need from our lender to show your lender? What do you need for your seller to be happy? That's still negotiating.
Well, we just did a deal, and it's all about relationships, really, having that line of communication. The buyer's agent up front, they, we had some rapport there, and then,
Thank you for taking our offer.
There were other offers, but it was a well-written offer. It favored the seller's terms, there was communication up front, and ultimately they won the deal. It went smoothly. I think, despite some of the ripple effects of COVID that were out of our control, but overall, it was a good experience, and I think, everyone was happy.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line. We're just trying to make everyone happy.
Yep.
So you got to realize, what your job is, and I think maybe some agents haven't caught on to this yet on the buy side, that kind of keep striking out. They haven't realized that, the word negotiate and the job to negotiate for your client doesn't just mean trying to sneak things past someone.
Right.
Now it means trying to figure out how you can win, and winning means you get the house.
Yeah. So the takeaway from this little conversation here, I think the nugget was exactly what you were talking about, is cash flow and the payment. At the end of the day of what you're paying for the property, it's as long as it's in line with the comps and you're not, overpaying. You might be slightly, but that's the trend, especially in the single-family home market. But as long as it appraises.
Yeah. What do you offer? Let me ask you this, and Cooper, this is probably a good thing for both of us to know. Do you think that in this kind of market that's so tilted toward the seller, and you're trying to provide convenience for the seller, trying to get your offer to stick out, do you offer it like a free rent back or something? Do you talk about that up front and say, hey, listen, here's what we're going to do with the buyer? You say, hey, listen, I'm going to offer this to them because I think it'll get us to the front of the line. You guys can stay in the house for 2 weeks, a month, whatever, rent-free after close, so that you can make a smooth transition to your next place. Is that something you offer up front?
That is one tool in the box for sure. I think listening to what the seller needs, what the seller's needs are, and crafting the deal, especially if you're in a situation and you're a buyer and you have some flexibility and you have that card to present, that's a great clear advantage.
If it's a vacant home, they probably don't care. But
right.
if the seller is there,
yes.
In place at the location, that could be something that tilts the scales.
Well, and it makes a lot of sense for two reasons, I think. One, because obviously the sellers might like it. And two, it's very rare that someone's lease is up on that exact date that they're closing. So, it might work for them, for the buyers as well.
Now, I will say that there is certainly risk and exposure that could follow that, because with a moratorium, and if people are occupying a property beyond the close of escrow, and maybe they haven't found a place to live or a replacement property, you could quickly get into a situation.
Good point.
So, you got to be careful and
weigh the risks.
And having that communication up front, knowing who you're dealing with, on the selling side, and trusting that those pieces will come together. But there's a lot of things that are out of our control right now, and so there could be some risks. So I think choosing someone that could represent you that's been around the block a few times is an advantage.
Super, super crucial now, as I believe it always has been, but particularly in a market where you have additional extenuating circumstances, unknowns, question marks, situations where you're not quite sure, hey, how far out on this limb do I go? If I'm removing contingencies and allowing free rent backs, how far do I need to go to win the deal and not have it be a situation where I've actually just put myself in a bad scenario?
Well, and as a buyer, it doesn't necessarily feel good giving it. It feels like you're giving it all away, and it's one-sided. So, but at the end of the day, to win, once you have the home, I think, at least once you're in escrow, there's other negotiations that can happen. But once you've, if you, initially, to get to the stage of locking it up.
You lock it up.
Lock it up, and then
Figure it out.
that's when you figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The key is to get your offer accepted.
Yeah,
that is.
You can figure things out after that. You have time for due diligence. Inspections, you have time to take a look at things, get an appraisal done, potentially renegotiate if things aren't what you thought they were.
Right.
But the key is to get your offer accepted, because that's what's happening right now is a lot of people are having trouble getting an offer accepted. I mean, sure, there's people who are getting an escrow and falling out. That still happens. It's always going to happen. But there's a lot of people who just aren't getting offers accepted, and they feel like they're sort of at the end of their rope, with, I guess I can't buy a house, and it's like, okay, no, you just have to be a little bit more aggressive. You've got to dial up the intensity.
Aggressive, but also you have to have some flexibility and in your ability to, bend.
And let's not discount how important personal relationships are. The reason why Brent is as successful as he is because people know him, they trust him, he has those relationships. If he sends an offer in, someone sees his name on it, they're going to know, okay, I can trust Brent is being upfront with me, and I know this is a deal that's going to get done.
It definitely matters.
Yeah, it does.
We get asked to do cross quals all the time, right? And which is understandably why, like, hey, you've never heard of this lender before. What do you think about this deal? I'm doing one right now, and I'm telling you, it's not a deal. It's not, and someone else said it was, and I know it. It's I was like, sorry, this ain't a deal. So there's a reason for the cross qual, and there's times when people make mistakes or they do what I call quick and dirty pre-approvals, and those simply don't always add up.
No.
And when you have complicated VA deals, there's residual calculation and non-veteran co-borrowers, and there's things that can put a wrench in it. You have sometimes people haven't disclosed things like, hey, I actually have to pay $4,000 a month in child support. Hey, that's going to affect things.
Wait, you mean borrowers aren't honest? What's going on?
So you have to ask a lot of questions, and some lenders ask questions. So, do you need to be aggressive to the point of putting yourself in a bad scenario? No. But do you need to maybe, if your offers aren't getting accepted, do you need to dial up the intensity with which you're offering, or maybe look at some of those additional options? How can I make this a sweet deal for the seller so that I can get my offer accepted and then I can be in the driver's seat? Because remember, buyers, when your offer gets accepted, you are now in the driver's seat. They're handing you the keys to the car essentially at that point. Not to the house, but to the car. You're driving the transaction now. Everyone's waiting on you to do your due diligence, release your contingencies, and then perform on the loan. So they're sitting back now. You're driving the car. So just remember that. In order for them to hand those keys over to you, they want to really know that you're the best driver for the car and that you're going to get to the destination. And so they're going to ask for you to jump through some hoops. They're going to want to see that your offer is the best for them. They want to make sure that you're going to get all the way to point B, and that means close of escrow. So understand that, know that. Don't be offended by that. Just know that that's where we're at, and in order for you to win, you've got to play the game. This is the game.
You do, and I think an important thing, just real quick to end on my end, there's a lot of new requirements with lending with COVID.
It's true.
Business liquidity for self-employed borrowers, you've got to now show their most recent 2 months business bank statements, and they have to have deposits into those bank accounts that will correlate with what you have income-wise, whether it's on their tax return or their profit and loss statement. That's a huge thing. All right. The other thing is, if rental income is used to qualify, we need proof that your tenants are paying rent.
Yep.
It's a big
Okay.
one.
The other thing, if you're a self-employed business owner, we have to know that your business is open during COVID. So if you're a hair salon, one of these businesses that's affected, a restaurant, you're not going to get a loan.
I can tell you one right now. How about an attorney who makes his money by doing court cases and the courts are closed?
Yep. Same thing.
So, you know, there's things like that where someone needs access to these certain different places in order to conduct a business and they can't get access. There's going to be a problem there, and you're going to have some explaining to do, and you're going to have to use a lot less income than you probably normally would be able to. And if you don't qualify with that lower income amount, then the loan's dead.
So just be prepared for additional requirements. It's nothing personal. It's just the environment that we're in.
And the purpose behind these things is to make a safe environment for everyone. If people are given loans that they are going to have a hard time repaying, that is how we have a real estate bubble. So this is all done preventatively in a precursor fashion to try to prevent some of the really bad things that we've seen happening in the past. So know that it's good intentions for the best of everyone, and it may suck for you in your particular situation, and I'm really sorry if
And it
that's the
sucks
case.
for the loan officer.
It sucks for everyone who's worked on it. It does. But it's for the betterment of the marketplace. And if you aren't able to get a loan, you'll know what you need to do or when things will be okay for you to get a loan again.
Yes.
And so it'll be okay. But just know that none of this is personal. It's just the market that we're in. And we'll always advise you if you guys have questions, drop comments, let us know. Everybody's contact information is on the YouTube link below. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. Appreciate you checking this out. Hey, share this with your friends. Let's help make San Diego smarter than everywhere else.